Morning, everyone, and Chodesh Tov, good Chodesh. We are up to Perek Dalid Mishna Vav. Shimon Gamliel Omer, the sage of Shimon, the son of Gamliel, said, Tamare shel tiltan. Again, we're going to be talking about a continuation of the conversation of different parts of plants. Which parts do we take Shuman Mises from? Which parts don't we? Even though all those parts may be edible. Shimon Gamliel said, we talk about the tamaris. Tamaris, they translate it as the buds. They translate the buds as the following. When the stalk of these plants, which is to grow, there is a very like bud that grows on top of it. That's what we're referring to here when we're talking about the tamaris. Which they translate again as a bud. And these are the buds of tiltan, which they translate here in the art scroll as fenugreek, v'shal chardol of mustard, v'shal pul alavan of white beans, chayavais b'mais. Shimon Gamliel said they are obligated in trimus and maisris. That means that these buds are eaten by people. Because they are eaten by people, they are considered the food of the plant, and therefore they will be liable to maisris. Okay, this is again something that people normally eat. Now, even if the owner did not plant these species with the intention of eating these buds, they are nevertheless subject to meiser, since they are commonly eaten. It's a very important word, commonly, in the sense that clearly there are other parts. These buds are only one part of these plants. And the Mishna is saying that even without the intention for them, unlike some of the leaves of the coriander that we spoke about, where you have to have intention to plant it for that. In this case, when you plant these plants, this bud will have to be separate. You have to separate shumas and maisros from these buds before you eat them. Or you have to. The point is, you have to separate shumas and maisros from them, like other foods, because they are commonly eaten. So there, Shimon Gamliel says that the buds of these plants, again, of the tiltan, fenugreek, mustard, and white beans, you have to separate shumas and maisros from them. Relezer says, now talking about a different type of plant, hatzlaf. Hatzlaf, they translate as a caper bush. Misaser, tamarais, vevyenes, vakafris. There are three parts of this caper bush. You have what they call the tamarais, which they call the flower buds. You have the evyonis, that are the berries. You have the kafich with the husks on the berries. So Relezer says, when you're dealing with this caper bush, all three parts you take meiser from. All three parts are edible. People eat them. And therefore, and according to Relezer, they eat them enough to be considered significant enough foods, separate shumas and maisros from them. Now, when we talk about these flower buds of this caper bush, the notes here in the Rambam and in the art scroll brings down the flower buds, which are what these tamaris are, of the caper bush are eaten even today and are known as capers. Okay? Now, so Rabbi Lezer says all three parts of the caper bush. Rabbi Akiva says, "Ein misaser ele evyonis," that you separate shumas and maisros from are from the berries, even though the other parts are edible, but they shein peri, because they are the primary fruit. They are the primary food, the primary part of this bush. The other parts, although they are eaten by people, are not significant enough to have separate maisros from them when you have these berries, which are the main food. So basically, according to Rabbi Akiva, on this caper bush, although all three parts are edible, and it seems like all three parts are something that people would be eating, nonetheless, right? These are three parts that people eat, nonetheless, being that they are not the other than the berries, the other parts, the buds or the husks are not the main part of the food. Therefore, according to Rabbi Akiva, you do not separate maisros except from the main part, from the main food of this plant. And Bartanura says, Allah is like Rabbi Akiva. Okay, so we're now up to the mitzvah positive commandment 13. Everything we've been saying until now, is even if what he's saying is true. The Lashon Harah is speaking about the friend. It's true. Nonetheless, doesn't make it permissible to say. But if let's say mixed in to the Lashon Harah that you're saying, you even have partial not untruth. You also transgress the Torah's commandment of midvash shekar tirchak, which means distance yourself from a matter of falsehood. And now you're not just a person who speaks Lashon Harah, but you now get a worse title, and that is a worse description is that you are now called for lying Maitzi Shemra, spreading a bad name, meaning basically spreading false information. The punishment for that is a lot worse than just speaking Lashon Harah or Rechilas. Let's do the next mitzvah. Another positive commandment which one transgresses when speaking Lashon Harah Rechilas is, there's a positive commandment, you shall walk in his ways. Whose ways? Hashem's ways. This positive commandment commands us to walk in the ways to follow the attributes of Hashem. All the way that Hashem deals with us is all for good. As our sages elaborate or explain, just as Hashem is merciful and gracious, so you should do the same thing. You should emulate him. The same thing with all the other positive qualities of Hashem. We find by Hashem in regard to his holy and pure attributes. We find Hashem does not like speaking badly about people, even about someone who's committed a sin. Hashem is always looking for the good and not for the bad. There are 4 groups that will not be able to receive the face of the divine presence in the world to come. One of them is Kat Mesapri Lashon Harah, the group of people who are habitual speakers of Lashon Harah. For you're not a God who has any kind of desire or liking to wickedness. Evil shall not live, shall not dwell with you. That's where we see that. If you speak Lashon Harah, you're not going to be able to receive the face of divine presence in Olam Haba. Therefore, someone who is habitual in this very bad trait, and Hashem, is certainly not emulating God. Hashem only does, everything Hashem does is for the good for others, or for that which he has created. You're not following that because you're doing the opposite. Being that Hashem is the ultimate good, and you're not being that way, therefore you're called the opposite of good, which is ra, bad, evil. And therefore, by speaking Lashon Harah, you are also transgressing this positive commandment. So now the Chavetz Chaim sums things up because this is the last of the positive commandments. So now we have just enumerated the 14 positive commandments that are common to be transgressed when one speaks Lashon Harah or Rechilas. Besides with the 17 prohibitions we mentioned previously. Even though it's not possible for one person at one time, in one time of speaking Lashon Harah, to transgress all of these mitzvahs. Nonetheless, somebody who is habitual in this very bad trait, over time, he's certainly going to transgress all of them. It could come out he's going to speak Lashon Harah, and sometimes on a person who's wise. Sometimes speak Lashon about a person in front of their face, sometimes not. And therefore, there are many different scenarios and possibilities. Although they can't all come together as one, nonetheless, at one time in one person, nonetheless, over time, the potential of transgressing these prohibitions is very great. Have a wonderful day. And again, Chaydesh Taiv, and Chaydesh, all the best.